Hey everybody, it's Charles, your hobby hero, and today we're going to be revisiting which grading company you should be using, PSA, CGC, or BGS. Before we get started though, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button down in the bottom corner if you like getting Pokemon content and updates. I do videos 3 times per week in addition to live openings. Now I feel like I just made this video, but there has been so much change between turnaround times and cost for these services that a lot of the reasons where I have sent these cards have been upended, and where I've been sending a lot of these cards is changing. So I wanted to share those updates and changes with you guys, give you the updated information so that you can best make those informed decisions on where you want those collections to go. Now the one I want to start with today is the most recent change, and that is going to be the PSA company. We'll throw some prices up on the screen as well. So for this particular company, now they are the industry leader. They continue to be, and I don't anticipate that this price change is necessarily going to change that, at least not in the immediate future. But they had some big price changes starting at their value position. Now this is their bulk submission grade, and that has gone from $10 a card to $20 a card. So it's doubled from their standard submissions all the way up to that $20. Now keep in mind too that you have to have a membership in order to get access to that membership fee. Memberships, the only membership they have open right now is actually their $100 membership, and that membership just provides you access to that discount bulk pricing, so it doesn't come with any credits, anything along those lines either. So you got to spend $100 to become a member of PSA to access what used to be a $10 price, but is now a $20 per price card. They did reduce the minimum number of cards for that submission down to 10. So if you don't have a big lot going out, you don't feel like you are required to submit more. But if you're submitting submissions that small anyways, it's still probably not going to be in your best interest necessarily to go that route. They've also doubled the cost of their Express. Express is now $150 per card, up from $75. Their regular submission went up to $100 on that end as well. And to couple all this in, their turnaround times have not improved at all either. So service levels starting from the economy level are 6 to 9 months on turnaround time, 4 to 6 months on their regular, about 5 weeks on the 10-day, 4 weeks on their 5-day, and 3 weeks on their 2-day service levels. So with these increased prices, we're not seeing anything that's going to be affecting turnaround times any soon. It is really just a way to deter people from submitting. Nothing else. You're not getting anything more from the service. They're not adding any benefits or features, or they're not adding anything. They're just increasing the price to stem the tidal wave of cards that are coming into PSA right now. And again, with those membership levels being what they are, a lot of times you're looking at using a middleman for these submissions. So you're looking at probably an additional 2 to 3 weeks that you're going to be adding to those turnaround times. Having said that, we can move into the next company, which is going to be CGC. CGC just recently had a price update and increase on their turnaround times as well. So their bulk submissions have gone from $8 to $9. Their economy submissions are up to $18 a card. Standard is $25. Express is $40. But the turnaround times have been dramatically increased for a lot of these. Bulk is all the way up to 70 days at this point in time. And again, you can see on the screen here what kind of follows suit on those increased days. Subgrades, which is a new category from PSA. PSA does not have subgrades. The cost of subgrades have also gone up from CGC, from that $5 benchmark to that $7 benchmark. Another big thing with that is they added an additional 5 days of wait time to process any cards that are graded with those subgrades as well. And then that leads us into the Beckett. Beckett's kind of consolidated theirs, made it a little bit easier to look at, but the overall price has gone up considerably per card. Their economy no longer has bulk discounts for submitting a greater number of cards. So it's just a flat $20 without subgrades, $35 for subgrades at that level. Standards up to $30 with a $50 for subgrades. Express is $100 a card with $150 for subgrades. And the premium service is $125 a card, and it doubles if you want subgrades, up to $250 a card. So obviously you've got to make your own decisions on how much money you're willing to spend to have these cards graded, but you also want to make sure that you're getting some value out of it. So what kind of values does each one of these services hold? So there's a number of different ways you can kind of assess this. What I chose for this one is kind of a benchmark, is I wanted to pick a card that was relatively accessible. It wasn't kind of a one-off thing where you may not see a lot of listings for it come up very often, so it could fluctuate the prices. It was high enough dollar that you could see some market separation in it. I mean, if you've got a $50 card that's a PSA and somebody's paying, and a $50 one pops up for CGC, they may just go ahead and pay the extra premium because it's not that big of a deal. So I wanted to pick a card that's a little bit higher up on the spectrum. And it was old enough that plenty of them could have gotten through the system. So for this one, I picked the Shining Charizard V from Champion's Path as kind of a benchmark to look at some of the 9s and 10s in those prices and what those kind of cross compare to. Now, I use 130 point to find completed listings. You can do this with any card that's out there, so you can better educate yourself on any particular card that you're looking for. So if you have a very specific card you're looking at where to send it to, you can go and pull comps using that and see what completed listings for both CGC, BGS, or PSA are completing at. But for this particular one, again, we're using those Shining Charizard Vs. Now, for PSA, the average on the last 3 sales for the Charizard Vs were about $388. Just to note, it was helped out tremendously by one outlier sell, finished for like $440, which was considerably above any of the other listings. But again, just picking the most 3 recent, it did bring it up considerably. CGC for the CGC 9s were at about $309. And again, 2 of the 3 for the most recent completed listings were auctions as well. So just a quick sidebar, I do not recommend doing auctions on any listings when you're trying to maximize the total profit margins you're looking at, unless you have a platform that you can very heavily advertise that specific card. There are a lot of, or if it's just a very niche card, that there just may not be a ton of them out there. But whenever it's a card that's relatively easily accessible, if there are buy it nows that are sitting there at, close to market value, people are trying to find these auction prices and get them to finish underneath that. That's what their target's going to be. If it gets close to those buy it nows, a lot of times they'll just go buy the card at that point and not fiddle with the last minute getting sniped along those lines. So I don't recommend it. It does usually end up in lower sale amounts, minus a few outside implications on there. But this one, for 2 out of 3 were auctions on it, and theirs finished at $309. BGS was about $319 on the latest 3 comps on it. So from the top of the heap to the bottom of the heap, it was about a 25% difference, going from the average on the PSA all the way down to the bottom, which was the CGC. So again, not the huge disparity that you think a lot of people talk about when they talk about, you can't get the same kind of money back from these particular companies. Again, any given day of the week, they're fairly close in comps. But again, even on this illustration here, looking at the most recent 3, about 25% from the bottom to the top. Now, the one thing that you're going to gain with CGC and with BGS that you do not have with PSA is access to the 9.5 grade, or 9.5. PSA does not have anything in between that 9 and 10, which we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. But at a 9.5, the CGCs come up to about $370, so almost even to what a PSA 9 price would look like. And on the BGS, the actual recent solds on that were about $485. So they actually passed the PSA 9 sales up by a fair margin, almost by $100 on their 9.5 grade. Now that does open up that gold label on the BGS, which is pretty coveted, and a lot of people really like the way that label looks. So there are some aesthetic issues that go into that, but you can't argue with results. Again, that 9.5 is going to bring that higher premium even than the PSA 9s. Now PSA, when we talk about their 10s, their 10s are actually pretty comparable between CGC and PSA. This is the pristine CGCs, not the perfect CGCs. BGS, their gold label 10s do outperform PSA and CGCs. And then obviously the black label on the BGS is kind of the gold standard. Now, I will never assume that something is going to be a 10. I've graded enough cards to just know that they are rare, regardless of what companies that you're going through. That nothing is guaranteed with anywhere. Having said that, though, PSA is the easiest one to get a 10 with because they have the most lack standards. This does not mean they don't grade correctly. I'm not implying that, but you can just go look and see what determines their 10s is a looser scale than for CGC or BGS. So if you do have one of those cars that are kind of falling in that mid-level area, and it's got some imperfections on it, PSA is going to be the easiest way for that to get a grade above that 9 to 9.5 range. So you can take that into consideration when you make that grade. So now what does that mean for you as a collector, as an investor? Well, where do you want the cards to go to? The short answer, right? Well, for me, as somebody who submits lots and lots of cards monthly, if it is a card under $100 in the modern era, pretty much 100% of the time it is going to go to CGC at this point. The amount per card is a huge factor. Unless you have an unlimited amount of money and an unlimited amount of time, obviously you want to get as many of these cards out that you can per submission and get them back as quickly as possible. So I can submit twice as many cards to CGC right now with the same budget as I could to PSA. And when we look at even this level blown up to this effect, again, we're talking about 25% increase in PSA sales versus being able to submit half as many cards at any point in time. So that's a huge difference when you're talking about revenue streams if you're in this business to buy and sell and stuff going from that point. BGS, I think, has isolated themselves even further as a primary source. I could never see myself submitting to BGS first. Now, I do think they're an excellent source to cross-grade. Obviously, the value is there at their higher grades. We've seen videos that have come out now where CGCs have graded straight across, if not graded up, into BGS. So I think when you get those really strong graded cards from CGC, if they're a higher dollar card, I would absolutely consider cross-grading them to BGS. But as a primary source to send stuff in, I can't see myself doing that with BGS. Now, having said that, I think with the price increases for PSA, they've kind of put themselves in that similar situation. I think, if you have that 9.5 and maybe the centering is really the only issue on the card, and maybe PSA becomes that secondary cross-grading source because that PSA 10 will go for a higher amount. But it really does put them in kind of an odd spot. The turnaround times are very inefficient for somebody who's using this as a main income stream. Even if you created a pipeline, and especially if you're using a middleman because you're paying those fees monthly, even though you're not going to be seeing any return on that investment for 9 to 12 months down the road, it really just becomes a very ineffective way to do it. Now, if you're a collector, these price changes aren't going to affect you much. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're talking about, hey, my entire collection is in PSA slabs or my entire collection is in BGS slabs, and I want each new addition to my collection to have those slabs on it, the difference between paying $10 and $20 or $15 and $20 respectively is not going to be the end of the day. When you're talking about what you want in your hobby, what you want there, they're still maintaining the premiums, they're still maintaining the price. Get what you want your cards to be in. But again, if you're looking for a min and max and you're trying to make the most on the profit side, unless you have a limited amount of time and an unlimited amount of resources, I think CGC has really just made themselves the go-to grading card service at this point in time. Now, going forward, will they be able to maintain this? I don't think so. I think PSA increasing their prices we're going to see a increase in turnaround time for CGC again. And unfortunately, with that, it's probably going to come an increase in price for CGC because they've got to manage their business just like everyone else does. I'm hoping at this point in time it's going to bring in some other competitors into the realm. We've seen a few people. Mint prices actually have been holding up very well. The Canadian company, I don't know if that's just due to the quality or just because their slabs look very similar to BGS slabs, but either way, like those prices are holding. So that makes me very confident that some other big players may start to move into this sphere, and we can really start getting these turnaround times, getting cards back in the hands of collectors, getting a reasonable turnaround time for those people who are investors or turning cards through at a quick pace. So hopefully moving forward, we can see that. I don't think it's realistic to expect the three that we have right now to be able to expand their businesses to keep up with the current demand. I don't think that they can keep increasing prices and still providing a value on the flip side. Because at the end of the day, these cards, a lot of them that are getting sent in aren't going to be worth the $20 premium that you're paying, especially considering the time that you're investing into it as well. So for the time being right now, with what we have in the Pokemon, I think this has become a one-legged horse for right now, and I think unfortunately that's going to put a lot of strain on CGC. I hope they're able to meet that demand. I hope they're able to keep pushing forward, and I'm hopeful that we get some of their players in here before CGC is forced down the same rabbit hole that PSA and BGS has, where they've got just ridiculous turnaround times or price hikes that people just can't keep up for. If you disagree with anything I've said, make sure you leave a comment down below. If you like these types of videos, hit that thumbs up on the next side. If you haven't already, hit notifications so you can get updates on future content. And until next time, Hobby Hero out.